Good Wednesday morning, everyone. Thanks for joining me this morning and our guests, of course. We'll get to them in a few minutes, but we should. I took a week off, went on vacation last week. Everybody thought I was crazy because the prediction was 100 millimeters of rain between Monday and Friday. Have to tell you, at the cottage, which isn't too far away, it's only at Conestoga Lake, I think we might have had 15 minutes of rain the entire 5 days. That was it. In fact, we were getting messages from our daughter who was home working saying, "Oh, there's a terrible thunderstorm coming through." And we'd look up in the sky and it'd be blue sky. Wonderful, wonderful weather. So, other than it was a little bit too hot, but for doing some of the chores, but it was good. Had a great week. A little bit disappointed, and it was probably really good timing for me because I was a little bit ticked off at the fact that the region didn't move into stage 2 with the rest of the province. Um, Vaccine ramp ups. I wasn't blaming the region for that. I understood exactly where they had to come from. I guess I'm blaming the province for that because it's their responsibility to get the vaccines out, and we shaved off some of our vaccines while we were helping Pearle and Toronto and everybody else get right-sided. And then when we became the one that was lopsided, it took a long time, far too long, for the province to get vaccines mobilized to the area. Thankfully, they did. I was talking to someone this morning who's still a little bit disappointed that the region hasn't made the decision to move into stage 2 right away because we are nearly, we're 41%. That's nearly halfway there to having everybody in the region double vaccinated. The vast majority, if not all, people who are suffering from COVID-19 right now are people who are unvaccinated. Depending on their particular situations, maybe we can have some sympathy for some of them if they are anti-vaxxers or said, I don't buy into this and I don't want it. Boy, oh boy, it's kind of hard for those of us who have made the conscious choice to go out and get immunized to sit back and feel really bad. And it's a tragic situation when society gets to that stage where we start saying, well, if you decided you didn't want it, well, too bad, suffer the consequences. But in all fairness, it appears that about 80% of the population, certainly in the region of Waterloo, are going to end up getting the vaccines. That's the vast majority, obviously. And if our lives are restricted as a result of that 20% not getting vaccinated, I think that's critically unfair. And maybe government needs to step in and do that. I know the Ontario Chamber of Commerce is starting to talk to the province about mandatory vaccinations for COVID-19. On a personal perspective, I've had both my doses. I actually had my second dose on June the 11th. Had no ill effects from either one of them. My wife had a little bit of, my daughter more so on her second dose. But the fact of the matter is, this is, as much about everybody else as it is about ourselves. And, there are no microchips in the vaccine. Nobody really wants any information that's in our bodies or in our minds. Nobody wants to control us. It's just completely ridiculous to think that way. Yes, vaccines are deadly, but I found out something very interesting that some people who maybe are listening or are on the call today are a little bit hesitant or a little bit worried. This vaccine for COVID-19, mRNA vaccine, is a message vaccine. It sends a signal to your body to produce the spike protein that is commonly found on all COVID-related viruses. And it tells your body to produce these on its own, make them, manufacture them, and then your body generates antibodies to combat them. What's interesting about it is the vaccine, the actual vaccine that they put into your arm, only stays in your body for about 2 days, and then it's gone. Doesn't exist anymore. If people have symptoms as a result of getting the vaccination after 2 days, it's not a result of the vaccination. you better go to the doctor because you got something else wrong with you, because the vaccine doesn't stay in your body. It dissipates, it goes away. Once it sends the signal, your body's done with it and it disposes of it. So that's how this kind of works. And people were worried, wow, it was created so quickly and not tested properly. Well, that also was a little bit of unfactual information, because mRNA vaccines have been studied for 20, 25 years. They've actually been sitting on the shelf for a number of years because nobody really bought into the funding mechanism. No governments, really started to fund them for development until, of course, we had a global pandemic, and then we had to have them. So governments then forked out the money to do the studies and to do the actual case studies that are needed in order to validate or verify how they work and whether they're safe. And that was the only thing. And the only thing that was really adjusted from a traditional vaccine setup was a lot of the tests that they do, the live tests with vaccines, rather than done in stages. So you do one component of it, and then you get all the data from that, and then you do another component of the testing. They were all done simultaneously. So it cut dramatically the number of months and years that they needed to effectively test the vaccine. So, there is a lot of information. There's a lot of, misinformation out there, but there's a lot of information out there that should really explain the facts and the truth behind the vaccines. And if we all want life to return to normal, there is no question about it. The case has been made. The vaccines work. The vaccines enable us to get back to normal. And we need everybody to get vaccinated and get back to normal. So I think that's what's really important, certainly from our economy, but I think the mental health of everyone as well needs a bright light. And the bright light can be if we all just roll up our sleeve and take the jab. But anyway, enough of that. So I always rant about that stuff because I'm really concerned, want to get the economy rolling so that we do get back to normal and start building your dreams, our dreams, and our community's dreams. And that's what's really, really important. But this morning, we're going to talk a little bit about it, I think, an incredibly exciting development in downtown. Transformational, game-changing, not unlike the Gaslight District was. I think it's, from my perspective, I've always, for 35 or 40 years, I always wanted Cambridge to put, to pull up its pants and start playing with the rest of the world of innovators and community development folks. I have the luxury of traveling fairly extensively in North America as a result of my occupation, and meeting with chambers of commerce and organizations in a variety of different sized municipalities, and really innovative communities as well. I can tell you that there are communities much, 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 much smaller than we are that do much, 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 much more in community development and building up their community and building on their economic successes and development. And there are communities that do less as well, but I can tell you for the vast majority, I was in one community where, you remember when we were building our digital library, our bookless library downtown, and there was all kinds of anxiety. There were people saying, this is nuts, this is crazy. We're spending $12 million or $13 million or $10 million or $15 million. Doesn't even matter what people were perceiving it to be. And that was just a waste of money and it was stupid. And I happened to be right in the middle of that whole debate because, you would read it online all the time. I was actually traveling and I went to a community that I just walking down the street talking to the president of the chamber. And I said, gee, what's that big building across the road right in the dead center of town? And he says, oh, that's that's the library. And I said, the library, it looks like there's windows busted out of it. And, and I said, this is like right in the center of town. He said, yeah, we're tearing that down and we're going to make a green space park where that is. And we're going to put an underground parking facility there first and then have it as a central park to the community. I said, what about the library? He says, oh, we took care of that a couple of years ago. We built $100 million digital library. And I said, really? I said, what a coincidence. I said, we're trying to build a $14 million digital library. And, our council and our mayor and our city are taking all kinds of pain and agony and strife from people. It's a waste of money. And he says, that's really interesting, Greg, because if our city council had not adopted it and built it, they wouldn't have been reelected by the people of the community. That's a progressive community saying, no, you know what we need? We need these opportunities for next generation. We need to build not for today, not for what we want, but for what the next generation is looking for, because that's our responsibility. Our responsibility is to take care of today, to build for tomorrow. And I think that's certainly what this project from Pearle Hospitality, the folks at the Cambridge Mill have in mind of transforming. I know that's what the Gaslight District was all about, was about transformation of a community. And I think it has inspired a lot of activity, and this will inspire even more. And some of us may not like it because it's not part of our DNA. It's not what we grew up with. But you know what? There are a lot of people in the community that can't wait for things like this to happen. And we need to be open-minded enough to be able to listen to that. So it's my pleasure this morning to introduce to you some folks from Pearle Hospitality. First of all, Mackenzie Meek from the Cambridge Mill team. Mackenzie is here, and Patrick Simmons, an architect extraordinaire in the community who has had an awful lot of experience at helping to develop and build and shape and change the viewpoints of our community. And so we're pleased to have both of them with us this morning. And I think Mackenzie and Patrick are going to take us through first a PowerPoint presentation on the proposed development, then we'll get into some discussion afterwards. So Mackenzie, over to you.
Thanks, Greg, and thanks for that great introduction. As you mentioned, my name is Mackenzie Meek, and I'm the planner and project manager at Pearle Hospitality. And I'm just going to give a bit of an introduction, some background on Pearle, and following that, Patrick, I'll hand it off to him, and he's going to go through that PowerPoint just with some more background on the Cambridge Mill Hotel and Residences. So just to provide some background on Pearle, I'm sure most of you know the Cambridge Mill restaurant located in downtown Galt. It opened up actually 10 years ago now, and that was a restoration project for Pearle Hospitality, and it's really become part of the Cambridge community since opening, located right along the water, and we're really excited to be extending that onto the next part of the site with the hotel and residences. A little bit further from the Cambridge Mill, we have Whistlebear Golf Club located in North Dumfries, Ontario, and that was a new build project for Pearle. Again, a little bit further, we have the Aurora Mill Hotel and Spa, which opened up in 2018. And again, that was a restoration project of the mill there. And we also constructed a luxury spa, event facility, and restored a heritage chapel. And that was phase 1 of Aurora Mill. And we're actually working on phase 2 right now, which is across the river from the mill. And it's the Aurora Mill condominiums. It's 134 units right along the river, and we're looking to start construction any week now on that. So that's phase 2 of Aurora Mill. We also have in Burlington, Ontario, the Pearle Hotel, which is about 120 units right on the lake right there. And it's set to open fall of this year. So that's what everyone's been working on recently, is getting that to be open. And we're very excited about that project. It's a new build as well. And then just down a little bit from the Pearle Hotel, we also have Spencer's on the waterfront, which is a restaurant located in downtown Burlington. We also have Bread Bars, which is the more casual version of the Mill restaurants. And we have 3 locations of that, 2 located in downtown Hamilton and 1 in Guelph. And finally, we have the Earth to Table Farm, which is located in Flamborough, Ontario. And it acts as an event facility for weddings, but it's actually also a fully functioning farm. So a lot of the produce coming out of the farm, it goes to the different restaurants across the community. So Pearle really takes a passion in all of the projects that they work on and really want to form part of the community and contribute to the community. So again, we just want to take that and all of the passion with this next project of the extension of the Cambridge Mill. And we're really happy with the proposal that we have brought forward. As Greg mentioned, we really think it will be transformative to the Cambridge community, and we're excited to be moving ahead with it. So with that, I'll pull up the presentation and let Patrick walk everyone through it.
Thank you, Mackenzie. While you do that, Greg, thank you very much for that kind introduction. I'm flattered. And thanks everybody for joining us this morning. I see some familiar and friendly faces in the crowd. And I just want to say we've received a lot of support, a lot of positive reaction from the community so far. We're very happy to feel that sort of groundswell of support and public opinion. Because it's been a long haul, we've been working on it for quite a while, and it seems to be paying off in terms of the amount of work we've put into the project. And it's a big team of consultants, and obviously the Pearle group themselves are putting a tremendous amount of work in here. So yeah, it's great. We've got some momentum going, but we're not taking anything for granted. It is a substantial transformational project, and it's something that people will take a lot of interest in. And we do need to continue to cross the T's and dot the I's, and make presentations like this to explain the project to people, why we're doing what we're doing, and hope that we continue to get support. So, on that note, I just want to say how important it is for people to really, if they feel that this is the right thing for Cambridge, to say so. Say so to your friends, to your business colleagues and associates, as well as to the decision makers. Staff and particularly council and the mayor. They need to hear from all of you, especially if you feel strongly that this project will make a positive difference in the city. So I hope we can answer your questions after this presentation. Some of you have already heard this presentation, so excuse me, sorry to repeat myself, but there's a lot of sort of fundamental foundational decisions that we made that I would like to take you through and to give you the reasons for why we are where we are. And we're tremendously proud to be working with Aaron Gianconi and Mackenzie and the rest of the Pearle team. I live in Cambridge, not too far from the mill, downtown. I've been here for 30 years and raised my kids here, and I'm a member of the downtown way about what needs to be done to make the city prosper and thrive. So let's go to the next stage, Mackenzie, or next slide, please, Mackenzie. So here we are, and I like this slide because it really shows what a tremendous city we live in. It's a wonderful place because it has this extraordinary Grand River flowing through it, and many cities would just kill to have something like this, some natural feature. And it's combined this natural heritage with the built heritage in our core area, which makes for truly one of the most interesting downtowns I think in Canada, particularly in Southern Ontario. And I'm, proud to live here. And I've been here for 30 years, and I've always said, wow, this has tremendous potential. And I keep saying that, for years. And finally, I feel like we're at the stage where we have the opportunity for that potential to be realized. Main Street has sort of languished for years. Big box stores, online shopping have decimated our core areas. And, finally, over the last few years, there's been a revitalization in local businesses and quite a few, great success stories in our downtown retailers. And now we have, as you have all noticed, I'm sure, a huge sort of real estate boom, development boom in Canada, and particularly Southern Ontario. And we're seeing it all around us. And it's confusing, it's exciting, and but what it does, it allows us to transform our cities. We really have no choice, through provincial legislation and development pressures. There's change is coming, and we have to manage it, and we're in a position to do that. And with the wisdom of council and our city staff, we can do this well. And I would like to say this is one project, together with the Gaslight District, that have a real chance to change our downtown for the positive. And what this slide illustrates is the location of our site. Obviously, you've probably all been to the Cambridge Mill and know what that has brought to our city over the last 10 years. Aaron's big bet on this city, I think, 12, 13, 14, $15 million worth of renovation to that great mill building, turned it into really a sort of regional bright spot for hospitality. And, he's built on that. He's created this sort of ecosystem of hospitality venues in this part of the province, and does it very well. And I think that's one thing that is worth sort of stopping and realizing this is not just, a developer coming in from out of town wanting to build, sell, and then, leave. This is somebody who's been running a business here for 10 years and has done this type of development in Aurora and run successful hospitality venues in Southern Ontario. So he's committing to running this business here. And I think that's a significant difference from many of the other sort of, Toronto-based or developers that are based outside the community. Mackenzie, let's go to the next slide, please. This is sort of just a diagram showing both Gaslight and the Cambridge Mill projects. And I think as chamber members, you'll be interested in sort of economic impact. And this is trying to illustrate the advantage to this project is that these are both developments, Gaslight and Cambridge Mill, that act as bookends to our downtown. So they have the ability, because they're within walking distance of our core area, to provide shoppers, diners, visitors, and just activity to our core area. I think many of these people, residents, visitors, hotel guests, shoppers, will come to both these developments, and from there they will spread out along the river and into the core area, which is, and it's a significant number of people that both of these developments will be bringing to the core area. And even better is the fact that they're outside that sort of very sensitive downtown core area that is highlighted in orange. So, they're on the periphery. So not only can we provide the number of people we need to create a viable urban economy in the core area, but they're also outside that sensitive spot. So, yes, we're building a hotel, we're building a condominium, but the nice thing about both these developments, they bring people not just back to the core, but to the river. So lots of new life and activity along the river's edge and into the downtown area. And that's hugely positive. And it's sort of, it's nice when a developer, and I think this is the case for a lot of our core area development, our goals in building are also align well with the goals of a community. We need people shopping, eating, dining, and visiting our core area, and both these developments provide that. Next slide, please, Mackenzie. So this is just an inspirational image that we've used for actually probably a couple of years now. Our landscape architect found some pictures of the Grand River. And so for inspiration architecturally, we're not just inspired by the traditional architecture of our downtown, but we're inspired by the beautiful natural setting we live in, and our heritage really comes from that, even more so than our built heritage. And so taking clues from our natural heritage has been the starting point for this project, because one of the fundamental moves for us as architects, and this was sort of inspired by Aaron and his thinking about the property for literally 10 years, even before we came on board. One of his decisions was to want to move the building back away from the river and create really a substantial riverfront promenade and public space, to create an inspiration, not just for our hotel guests and visitors, but the public at large, as well as a way of thinking about the river in downtown Cambridge for the future, rather than, as most buildings do in the downtown, turn their backs to the river. We're turning our front to the river. So this, I just find this a very compelling, beautiful couple of photographs, and it drives us in treating our waterfront with as much sensitivity and care as possible. And so that's, let's go to the next slide, Mackenzie. I think we'll get right into some of the details here. So this is not just a site plan of the project, but a context plan showing the facility as well as the adjacent area. So obviously Grand River at the front, and you can see our two towers are, there we go. Yeah, Mackenzie's sort of highlighting there. The hotel, it needs to be as close to the wedding venue and the restaurant as possible. So it's at the south end of the site, and with a closer connection to those facilities. And the residences is the taller tower to the north end of the site. And they both sit on, we'll call it a podium, which contains commercial uses, for instance, a cafe, bar, lounge, hotel and condo lobbies. This sort of, you'll see in a minute, we'll show you the rendering of the lobby from the riverside, but really trying to create some activity, some life, some, frankly, glamour at that size to bring people to the river. When we presented at the public meeting the other day, the feeling was that, Cambridge really needs a place where, if you wanted to propose to, your future spouse, or you wanted to show off the city to somebody visiting for the first time, we want to provide that place along the river here. Sort of spectacular, interesting from an architectural standpoint, and comfortable from a landscape standpoint. A place that you walk down to, we would have sidewalks landscaped and gradually sloped from the street to come up to this waterfront public space to enjoy yourself, and to watch a wedding party go from the hotel to the restaurant, or a movie star who was in town for a TV shoot going in and out of the hotel. Just a really fun, interesting, exciting place, but big enough that there's a sort of variety of places to sit and either relax or hang out with your family, grab a coffee, etc. So yeah, I just wanted to say that because, yes, it's a hotel and condo development, but we're really paying a tremendous amount of attention to the site and the ground level experience for the public. We're adding lots of people into the community. We also need to create great public space to support that. You can also see on this context plan, we're adding a parking garage across Water Street. So we're providing 2 levels of parking beneath the towers, but we want to provide parking for, any eventuality. This is the existing restaurant and wedding venue accommodate a tremendous amount of weddings each year, as well as restaurant guests. And that's just going to increase with the hotel and the residents. So, the bottom line is we're providing more than enough parking to suit the development's needs. And I want to say, just a little bit, Aaron, I think understands, as you probably all do as well, that, he has so many weddings each year, but there's no place for people to stay. And so, they go back to the 401 and stay at those, fairly modest hotels on the 401 there, or they go back to Toronto or wherever they're from. There's really not a place convenient for wedding parties and wedding guests to stay. So, that was one of the driving forces behind the project, is to create a downtown hotel, which many communities our size don't have. And I think it's a huge boost to our city to be able to have a hotel of this caliber right literally walking distance from the core area. And then just to build on that, the idea for many hotel owners these days is to combine that with a condominium development. So there's a larger group of users, clients, customers for things like the restaurant, the spa, the fitness area, and other amenities. So there's a sort of integration and economies of scale in a project like this when you combine a residence and a hotel project within one. So that sort of drives the business case. And the other thing driving the business case, if I can just focus on that for a second, is obviously the number of units in the residence tower and the hotel suites have to make up for the tremendous costs involved in trying to figure out this development for literally years. We're not the first architects that have worked on this. I hope we're the last, but Aaron went through quite a long design phase, and it's a very difficult site. It's contaminated. The GRCA is right there. There's the berm along the river. There's a tremendous number of different property lines. There's servicing issues. There's the traffic on Water Street. There's literally dozens and dozens of different consultants who have to get involved to produce reports, to even get, Ministry of Environment approval. And then, of course, what we're going through right now, the planning approvals process. So, it's a huge investment. And, once you add up all the figures, Aaron has come up with a number of hotel suites and residence units or apartments that need to be built to justify the cost and the risk of something like this. So, I just want to put that out there. It's the basic rationale for the height of these buildings is the number of units that allow the business case to proceed. So just back to that parking garage, we're not just building the garage, but we're building a pedestrian bridge that connects the garage to the top of the berm, so that you'll be going over the traffic. I think Aaron and felt that, the last thing we want is for, wedding parties and guests to be trying to rush across what is a very, very busy street with heavy truck traffic. So that not only acts as access for hotel guests, et cetera, but it provides sort of a gateway feature to the downtown. And that's something we wanted for the development as a whole. I'm sure all of you know that experience of passing GCI, going under the railway bridge, and then heading down that hill is really nerve-wracking, and it's not getting any better. So what we wanted to do is to slow traffic down a little bit. We've been working with the region and transportation engineer to make modifications to the Mackenzie, you can just point it out on the right-hand side of that slide, the changing that area to two-way and then providing a turnaround at the end there. So we wanted to help the traffic situation for the Grand Condo building, but also slow traffic down and introduce people to downtown Cambridge in a more sort of urbane way. We have this pedestrian bridge acting as a gateway, as well as the elevation, the facade of our project on Water Street. We are working with what I consider one of the country's best landscape architectural firms to provide dense planting and articulated stone facade along there, because we're putting the entrance to the building at the riverside. We're not trying to animate with people and stores the Water Street facade. We felt that was an uphill battle. We want to bring people up off Water Street to the water side of the building, to the river side of the building. So our efforts on the Water Street side will be architectural and related to landscape and planting. And we're going to continue that all the way along the Water Street property line, adding stone walls, landscape walls, as well as heavy planting to really create great sort of introduction experience to downtown Cambridge. And again, that's part of, we're bringing people to the core area with all that entails, but we're also trying to enhance the public space. Let's go to the next slide, please, Mackenzie. So there's just a little bit more detail. I want to say that we're trying to minimize the number of cars at the river side of the building. Yeah, it's a drop off. It's the place where you have the paparazzi gathering to take pictures of TV stars staying in the hotel. But it's also, we're trying to slow traffic down. We're trying to plant that heavily. We're trying to provide seating. And, obviously the pedestrian path is going to remain, but we're going to enhance it with paving, planting, lighting, landscape furniture, trying to make it a real people place. And one of the ways of doing that is the entrance to the garage for guests and residents is immediately off Water Street, right there where Mackenzie's got the cursor, so that most people will come in off Water Street and immediately go into the parking garage. And it's only people that need to be dropped off that will go up to the river side of the building. So you can see from this drawing the shape of these towers, the South Tower, the hotel, and the North Tower, the residence building. They're shaped, they're twisted, torqued, trying to refine them to make them as tall and thin and elegant as possible, trying to maximize, of course, the views of the river, but also trying to take the building as far as possible and slope it away from the Grand Condo building to in deference to them to maximize their views as well. We've had lots of contact and discussion with the Grand Condo board. They're the most important neighbor, and I think we've put a lot of effort into trying to work with them to make this as benign as possible, if not positive. Certainly the last iteration that was done before we came on board was much less a positive development for them, and we took that to heart. I'm talking in terms of both their view corridor, their view shed issues, as well as the functions that we were providing and the whole traffic control issue. So we really, would like everybody to be happy with what we're doing here. And I know that's not going to be possible. There are always people who are going to react negatively about a project as substantial as this one, but we honestly are, super excited about it. And, Aaron's heart is in the right place and he's running the business here. So he really wants this to be a success, not just for his own business, but for the city as a whole. Mackenzie, let's go to the next slide, please. So there it is. That's the sort of iconic image that we want for the city, and we think the city is ready for. And we've had this drawing in place for a year or so, and it's becoming more and more reacted positively. I did not expect that, and vast majority and I guess I'm biased, but vast majority who are complimentary and excited about this, and they sort of can't believe that Cambridge can attract development like this. That's not to say that people who have concerns, shouldn't be addressed, and I'd like to, try and talk through why we're at this stage and talk about why we've developed a project like this. Referring back again to that previous iteration of 3 or 4 or 5 years ago, the height was much lower, but the building was much wider and thicker. And there was a visceral negative reaction to that project from many quarters, not just people who were anti-development, but people who really had aesthetic concerns with the idea of a sort of wall building being built along the waterfront. And that, took Aaron back to the drawing board, and then working with us, this is what we developed, these 2 tall, thin, iconic towers instead of this sort of wall-like building along the waterfront. And I'm excited about it, and we've spent a lot of time looking at some very recent, modern, but highly refined towers that have been going up in other communities, trying to develop a suitable aesthetic for the facades, and to give them something of Cambridge, to make them buildings that are unique to our city, so that when people see these buildings, they think, oh yeah, that's Cambridge, right? Not just your run-of-the-mill condo building. So we've have a silhouette or skyline feature, this sloped roof that's very distinctive. We have this beltline feature about a third of the way up, and it sort of steps down. It's not the same height for each building, so kind of steps down towards the wedding venue and towards downtown. And the one in the residence building, the north tower, is close to the same height as the grand condo building. Sort of just a gesture, architectural gesture, to creating a cornice line or a belt line at that lower level. And then beyond that, it's this sort of extravagant tower that goes up. So you can see here, you can't really tell from this viewpoint that these are sort of tapered back to front and shaped and twisted to for the views as well as for the grand condo views, but also to try and make them as thin, as elegant as possible. But in reality, as you're wandering through the city, looking at these, walking along the river, you will see these shapes, and they will be distinctive and unusual and different from your typical rectangular or square slab building. Mackenzie, let's go to the next slide, please. So there we are, and this is another image that we're really, super excited about, very happy with, and really it is a transformational message to the city that yes, Cambridge is ready for something like this. Cambridge can support this. And it's, glamorous, yes, fun, interesting, vibrant, and we think that Cambridge is ready for this, not just from a functional standpoint, bringing this many people to the city, because I think Aaron has, made the case for himself that he has the ability to bring this this kind of economic, social, cultural activity to the city, but also how to reflect that in architecture. So, this is, and you really can't tell from here, the architecture for sure, but the landscape architecture, we're just beginning to explore the form language and how to make this really work with the river, going back to those images that we showed, that this is a landscape and a front lobby that we really want to respond from a formal standpoint to the river, all times of year, using plant material that changes over the seasons to make this a place that's as delightful to walk in the winter as it is in the summer. So there it is. And we've had a lot of people who are, super excited, but a lot of the people who are, thinking, wait a second, I moved here because it's a small city and I don't want that to change. And I get that. I mean, I've been here for 30 years, and one of the things that attracted me, and probably many of you as well, is because this is a beautiful small city with a riverfront and extraordinary built heritage in the core area. And when change like this is introduced, it's a wake-up call. But to that, I want to say that our downtown has been languishing for years, and we do need to introduce more people to the community to allow us to have a viable urban economy. We don't have that yet. We need, frankly, several thousand more people to do that. And one of the cases for this building is that, and Gaslight too, is that we can put these people, literally hundreds of people on the periphery in these tall buildings, so that we don't have to put the density in the immediate core area. We can preserve that beautiful, low traditional core downtown that we have by having the density on the periphery and then feeding people into the downtown and along the river. So I want to say that because density, by provincial mandate, has to be injected into our core areas. And we, as a city, have to figure out how to do that. And it's a tremendous challenge because of the river valley we're in, the sort of constrained core that we have in our river. There's very few eligible building sites that we can add the kind of density that's necessary to meet the density targets that have been set for us in our core area. So, obviously there's self-serving aspect to this, but I honestly do feel that both here and the Gaslight provide these tremendous opportunities to introduce investment, shoppers, diners, visitors, and life to our core area. So I always like to end on this slide because it's such a sort of spectacular image, but I want to move to the next slide because it just talks about some of the details, because I think some of you will be interested. Let's go to the next slide, please, Mackenzie. So this just is a cheat sheet for number of units, 250 residential suites, 150 hotel suites. We call it attainable housing. I don't think we can make the case for this project providing affordable housing in the core area. And I think that's, I think everybody realized that this is not an affordable housing project, but we do need all levels of housing in Cambridge. And, frankly, we need places for middle class people who are not just working in the hotel, but working in the downtown area. Yeah, we have beautiful residential areas on either side of the river, but we do need to provide a range of housing types and levels in the community so that people have choices. I know people who have moved out of Cambridge and out of Galt because they don't have the choice of a place to live that they want. This just adds another range, and there will be units, particularly in the lower, rear section of the residential tower that will be, priced in that sort of attainable range for the community. And as a, somebody who's frankly very interested in affordability of housing, that any housing built in our core area is going to help, whether it's at the luxury level like this or whatever. We just simply need more housing. And the tax money that a project like this will provide is also helpful to a municipality like Cambridge to support efforts like increasing public amenities in the core area and perhaps affordable housing as well. Moving down the list, contamination was a huge issue here, and we only received, I think, a year or so ago, sort of green light to take the next steps from the Ministry of Environment. So that was a huge step and a costly step for Pearle to take to finally finish that process where the site was deemed developable. So 20,000 square feet of new commercial space. Correct me if I'm wrong, Mackenzie, but the spa at Aurora, I think, was voted Canada's best this past year. So that's the goal here, is to build a similar destination type spa for hotel users, the residents, but also for the community as well. We talked about revitalizing. Revitalization is, I think, a modest word for what we're going to do with that public space on the riverside. It truly is going to be a promenade for public use and all that entails. And hopefully that level of development will catch on and the rest of the riverfront can be upgraded as well. We talked about the improvements to the existing road as well as parking. Let's go to the next slide, Mackenzie, please. I think this is the last one. There's that property tax revenue, significant boost to the city's coffers and money that can be used for a tremendous amount of things, including, public amenities and, dealing with some of the downtown issues we have, like homelessness and poverty and substance use, that kind of thing. You need money to help with those problems, and taxes is a big source of that money. Employment growth, 300 long-term positions, that's hugely significant, as well as 250 construction jobs. And just signing off, lots of people living, working, playing in the core area, and enormous boost to tourism and housing and retail. And that ties in with, the city and the regional goal of providing a business case for the ION LRT route to end in our core area. We do need people living, working, shopping, and just being in our core area to justify that LRT coming here. I like to think it's going to be built no matter what, but it sure would be helpful for the city to say, here's another few hundred people living in our core and visiting as well. So, Mackenzie, I think that's the last slide.
It is the last slide, and I just would also like to just conclude again everything that Patrick has been saying. We really just see this as a revitalization project to help contribute to really revitalizing and making it a vibrant Cambridge. We want the next generation to say, this is a place that I want to live, and we really truly think that this project will help contribute to that. So with that, we're open to any questions or comments. I will just note that I have another meeting at 10 a.m. so I do have to run in a few minutes, but I'm going to pass on my email to Greg. So if anyone wants to have a follow-up call or any follow-up questions for me specifically, I'd be more than happy to set that up, but Patrick can also answer a lot of the questions if there is any.
Yeah, I actually have an appointment at Tim Hortons at 10 o'clock to get another coffee. So really, really important stuff. Just a couple of questions that either one of you can address. What is the plan with the bridges, all this work being done on the bridges across the street? I think it really doesn't play into it. at all. Whatever their plan is their plan, correct?
That's correct. Yeah, we're willing to work with the city on any initiatives being brought forward, but it really will be the city driving it. But again, always there, open conversation with them and happy to contribute in any way that we can.
I think my understanding is Cambridge Mill has a long and distinguished relationship with the residents of the Bridges from time to time, and working on the farm and providing them opportunities and meals at Christmas time and different times of the year as well. So they've been a participant in the process of such a terrible thing as homelessness in the community, and maybe it's been a distinct advantage for the Bridges to be as close as they are to a company like that or a business like that. Laura asks, is this project related to the push to remove parking on Water Street?
As Patrick mentioned, we are proposing that parking garage across the street from the development. So all of the parking on our facility that's needed, whether that be the hotel or the existing restaurant event facility, will be provided on our site. I'm not sure about the push to remove.
Yeah.
Patrick, yeah. Do you know?
Doesn't have anything. It's not your project.
It's not. No, it's not. So that's separate. We're providing the required parking that we'll need.
Yeah.
We would need parking. It's part of the business model, especially for the residents. So yeah, that's not related to us, but we will be providing the required amount of parking on site.
Another question. This is always my favorite question. The mill is such a beautiful old building. Why can't you design buildings that are in keeping more with the design of the mill instead of building modern buildings? Beauty is in the eye of the beholder in every single case. And oftentimes I hear that a lot on not just this project, but on every project. And oftentimes it's, in fact, I'll tell you a quick little story in just 30 seconds. Years and years ago, I was involved in the local architectural advisory committee, was advising on a redevelopment of a property, and the owner of the building actually took a design and put a distinctly different, exactly the same as the original structure was of this historical building. And it came back to the local architectural committee and they said, no, you can't do that. That's not what we call sympathetic. We want the addition to look distinctly different so that you can identify the difference between the new and the old. And so sometimes that's what kind of makes it attractive, seeing old up against new and new beside old. But again, I think design is purely in the hands of the owner of the building and the architects and, people who, trying to bring some art to the whole thing. Wouldn't you say, Patrick? Is that what it is? Is it art?
Well, it is, and it's always, a dialogue. And I think we've learned in Cambridge, and, some of the most successful projects follow a strategy like the one you've just laid out, right, where you provide a contrast so that the older buildings really sit on their own as pieces to be appreciated for what they were. And you don't try to emulate, because particularly in projects like this size, which, frankly, were not conceived of in the past. 100 years ago, you would never build a project this size. And so once you build projects of this scale, you kind of have to use a different language than the language they used 100 years ago, or even more recently. But I think Cambridge has now got a tradition, and I hate to use that word because it's only maybe 30, 40 years where we've said, this is the strategy we're going to use. We're excited about the future. And not that the past doesn't need to be given its due, but we're just as positive about what's going to happen next as what's happened before. So let's take pride in our design capability and our future, our forward-looking attitude in this city. So we built a brand new city hall beside the old city hall, and they both sort of work well with each other. And you can enjoy that old city hall and you can enjoy the new city hall. Similarly with the design exchange, you go in there into that glass box and you look back at that old building, and they've treated it with tremendous sensitivity and care, but they've also said, hey, this is the 21st century Hamilton Family Theater. And, you know, the work we've done with Joel Doherty, I see he's here on the call, at Fort Hip at the Gaslight District, where we've combined old and new and tried to be very thoughtful and sensitive with the old, but also, you know, said, hey, we got to bring more people into this community. So how can we do it? So, you know, I get it. You know, frankly, we've tried in the past to build the old fashioned way. You can't do it anymore. Very difficult, not just to build it, but to design it as well. So it's better to design with confidence for the future and try to do it really well with richness, with materials. The whole stone base of our project is different from the, you know, the tall building itself. And that experience that you're going to have while you're at the ground plane, the ground floor of our building will be, I think, as rich and interesting, as compelling as the existing old mill building, but in a very different, you know, contemporary way.
Awesome.
Thanks.
Well, it is 10 o'clock. I have an appointment at Tim Hortons. Mackenzie has an appointment on another call, but it sounds like we're going to need to have you folks back as we move it along. We know we didn't get into a lot of things like the timeline and some of the other components, but we'll certainly do that and have you folks back and talk more to small business community that are really going to be the champions of promoting your success. You know, we love dining at the mill. We're going to love to continue dining at the mill. But now maybe we can all get married again at the mill. And I'm not talking about getting married again to another person. I'm talking about, you know what I mean. Anyway, we'll all do that and maybe stay overnight in the hotel as well. But thanks very much, folks. Have a great rest of the Wednesday. We'll see you next week. We'll let you know who's coming on next week. If there are any questions, let me know, and I can pass on Mackenzie's contact information to you.